So we will start again. I hope everyone can hear me.
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. It is my pleasure to invite you to this exclusive webinar on trade and investment opportunities between India and Brazil, being organized by the Trade Promotion Council of India in partnership with the India-Brazil Chamber of Commerce and with the support of the Embassy of India in Brazil and Embassy of Brazil in India. Brazil is a key trading partner for India in the Latin American and Caribbean region. Indo-Brazil bilateral trade was recorded at around $7 billion in 2020. The two countries have elevated their relationship to a strategic partnership and have strong collaboration at plurilateral and multilateral forums, including the BRICS, IBSA, G20, UN, and WTO. Both countries have set a target of increasing their bilateral trade to $15 billion by 2022. India has signed a preferential trade agreement with the MERCOSUR regional grouping that comprises Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay, and Paraguay in 2004. Both sides have agreed to expand the PTA beyond the current list to further unlock their bilateral trade potential. The August panel for this session today will talk about the vision and potential for India-Brazil relations, the potential for growth in bilateral trade, investment, and the opportunities that businesses from both countries can explore in the coming years. For this webinar, it is my honor to welcome His Excellency Shri Suresh Reddy, Ambassador of India to Brazil, Mr. Eduardo Uzil, Charge d'Affaires, Minister Counselor, Embassy of Brazil in India, Mr. Leonardo Ananda, President, India-Brazil Chamber of Commerce and Honorary Consul General of India to Rio de Janeiro, and Mr. Ashok Sethi, Director, Trade Promotion Council of India, and Mr. Suresh Makijani, Joint Director General, Trade Promotion Council of India. At the outset, I would like to request Your Excellency Shri Suresh Reddy to deliver your inaugural address for this panel.
Thank you. I mean, it's always a pleasure to meet the friends on the screen. I will start with by greeting Mr. Ashok Sethi, since he's an old friend and I have been seeing him in the business of trade promotion now for almost 3 decades. I saw him in action in Muscat, in Iran, in Baghdad, in different countries, and I think he really represents the best of TPCA in terms of the commitment of the Trade Promotion Council to promoting the two-way trade. I feel we cannot have a better partner, and I'm also very glad to see and welcome Mr. Eduardo, the Charge d'Affaires of the Brazilian Embassy. His presence only reflects that it's a two-way partnership. That when we are looking at trade promotion, we are looking at promotion of not only Indian products to Brazil, but fundamentally strengthening the trade relations between the two countries. And so I'm very glad that he's here joining us today in this event. And similarly, Mr. Leonardo, he represents the best of the private sector in Brazil. He is heading, of course, India-Brazil Chamber of Commerce. And I'm very glad he's also here as a partner. And then Mr. Makijani, who is bringing a whole lot of experience and expertise in the field of trade promotion through the TPCI. So it really gives me a lot of pleasure to join this event. As you correctly said, when you look at the potential, we are talking of 2 countries. India, which has got a population of what, 1.4, 1.5 billion, and Brazil, a population of 200 million plus. So to start with, trade is all about market. So when I look at the population size itself, 1.7 billion combined market size, it itself indicates the size and potential which exists. Along with that, we are also talking of the size of the economy. India's economy is now close to $3 trillion, and Brazil is also approaching $2 trillion. And so you're talking of a combined economy of $5 trillion. And here the question is, our trade is still only about $7 billion. Why? I think in the past, we were concerned about the distance. We were concerned about the language, and we were feeling more comfortable with perhaps our neighborhood, and then beyond the neighborhood, perhaps with the English-speaking countries, so to say, who are our traditional trading partners, which is understandable. And similarly, Brazil was also more preoccupied with, Europe and with the US and with the neighboring countries. But today, thanks to technology, we are able to do this connect in a much more meaningful manner, in a much more stronger manner, in a much more beneficial manner. Because imagine if you're going to organize a trade with delegation to be visiting here, that would have been quite a challenging exercise, because you'll be flying for 2 days to come here, then you'll be staying here for 3 days, 4 days to do the business, then again we'll be flying back. And so which means a businessman has to devote something like 7 days just to come to this region to do business. But today, thanks to digital technologies such as the Zoom and other platforms, we don't need to spend that much of time. Just in 1 hour, we can establish a contact, we can have a discussion, and we can arrive at a mutual understanding in terms of how we proceed on our trade partnerships. That is the beauty of digital technology. And I would like to inform that what I find after I come here is I was very impressed with the strong dynamic private sector of Brazil. And the first thing which occurred to me is that how come we don't have a strong partnership with this dynamic private sector of Brazil? Because to me, when I saw the private sector in Brazil, I was only reminded of the private sector in India. That today, when we talk of India growth story, it is the Indian private sector which is leading the growth story. And similarly in Brazil also, if you look at the growth of Brazil, it is the private sector which is leading the growth of Brazil when you say the Brazil story. And also when you look at now post-pandemic, the recovery which is happening in Brazil, already the numbers are being revised at 4% plus in terms of the growth rate. I think in the G20 economies, perhaps Brazil is the fastest recovering economy in the top 20 big economies of the world. So my kudos to our friends in Brazil who are making this recovery possible. This again shows the depth and the strength of this economy. And this again conveys a message saying that we need to have a strong partnership. Sorry, I was just seeing some chat. Somebody was mentioning that they were not able to see the screen. I think now they're able to see the screen. This only shows the depth of the Brazilian economy and reinforces the message why we need to have a stronger partnership. Now, when you talk of Brazil, we cannot talk of only Brazil, but we also need to look at the region. And I would urge when anybody is in the business of trade and talking in terms of import and export, I would urge them to look at the trade numbers, which is available in all the websites. And when you look at it, you will find that Brazil is today, I mean, the region has become a much larger market for India as compared to many of the traditional markets. That is something which our businessmen have not still understood. The businessmen who are focusing on the region, they have been able to tap into this region because this is relatively yet to be tapped into, the potential is yet to be realized. And when you look at, again, within this region, you look at MERCOSUR, for example, by establishing a strong business partnership with Brazil, you're also able to tap into the larger MERCOSUR market. Now, these are the advantages which very few countries provide for you, that not only do they have a large domestic market, but in the process, you also have access to the larger MERCOSUR market. And again, to put it in comparison, Sao Paulo alone is economy is supposed to be about $600 billion plus. And the next biggest economies are other countries in the region. So you find that when you come to Brazil, when you start doing trade with Brazil, you're essentially reaching out to an economy of something close to $4 trillion in the whole region, the whole country is covered. So I would urge our friends in India, and I would also request TPCI to promote the region and especially Brazil with its members. And from the embassy, we are here to work very closely with you. And we would be happy to support you in this process. And again, I would like to thank you all and TPCI and of course, Ashok ji especially for this taking this initiative and organizing this event. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for your address. Clearly, the dynamism in the private sector, which you mentioned, raises a lot of optimism for a partnership between the two businesses of the two countries. I would now like to request Mr. Eduardo Uzil, Charge d'Affaires Minister Counselor, Embassy of Brazil in India, to give his opening remarks.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for TPCI, Mr. Virat, and all the partners there. Thank you, Ambassador Reddy, for your address, which is, as usual, very informative and encouraging. And first, thank you for having me. The ambassador unfortunately couldn't be here, but I'm very honored to be. I want to say that everybody knows that the relationship between India and Brazil has been growing and increasing and becoming denser for the last few years. But I think that we still lack some strategic thinking in this partnership, in this relationship as far as trade and investment goes. We have a strategic partnership since 2011, but we still just starting to think strategically from point of view of trade. We cannot just think of each other as occasional markets, occasional opportunities. We have to think as an in-depth or a longer-term partner. I'll give you an example, positive example. Before 2016, I doubt that anybody in Brazil, maybe Leonardo, could know the word pulses, which are so important here in India. After 2016, when there was a presidential visit here to India, Brazil started to invest in pulses because we saw that the Indian market could be a long-term investment for us. And now Brazil is starting to seriously export pulses to India and produce them. So this is what I mean by strategic thinking. Well, everybody knows that in last year's presidential visit, there was the goal of doubling the bilateral trade was established for 2022. This was a pre-pandemic goal. Of course, we have to adjust everything, but it still works as an ambitious goal for us, an ambition that we have to think about and think ahead. And one of the things that we have to overcome is a lack of awareness. We are not still aware enough of each other, as Ambassador Reddy mentioned several times. And events like these by the PCI are like another way, a great way of overcoming this awareness gap. Of course, one of the first areas that we have to think about is agriculture. Right? Agriculture is an opportunity for Brazil to export to India, to increase its exports. As I mentioned, pulses, but food consumption in India grows by 5 to 7% a year. The country still is self-sufficient in many ways, but the increase in quality of life in the coming years will make it more necessary to import food. And this is an opportunity for Brazilians. Brazilians already export a variety of foods, but there's a lot of room for more. And pulses is one, but also fruits, nuts, superfoods. I just learned a few days ago this expression I found fascinating. How can a food be a superfood? Still in the agribusiness area, we have something that is it's something that Brazil and India have in common, and it's increasingly important for both, which is ethanol. Brazil has a long experience with ethanol. India is catching up very quickly, and the government of India changed its goals of mix of ethanol in fuel, which is just the beginning of a major partnership, as I see it. The embassies in a few weeks will promote ethanol talks, which is the second seminar on the subject. The first one was held last year, and the goal is exactly to discuss what are the possibilities in mobility to gain, for both countries to gain in ethanol. I think that also Brazil has a lot to share with India, and India with Brazil in agritech. We have established India-Brazil cross-incubation program in agritech. The first part was held in 2019. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, the second part that's supposed to take place in Brazil is not possible yet, but we are going to work for that. But also we've been promoting events on startups that are a major share of market that has to be explored by both countries. We both are countries that work with startups and they are growing, and we need to explore them. I want to mention a sector that is not necessarily taken into account by a lot of analysts, is defense products. India is a huge defense market compared to Brazil, but we already have a few joint ventures, which is a very encouraging start. In ammunition, for instance, we have joint ventures, and we are negotiating a memorandum of understanding between governments exactly to help and encourage the companies of both countries to get closer and closer and to do business, not only, as I said, not only as an instant, immediate opportunity, but also as a long-term strategic partner. The same is true for investments. I mean, as far as we know, investments of India in Brazil are much bigger of Brazil in India, but we believe that it's a two-way, and Ambassador already mentioned that, and he's correct. And it's a two-way relationship. It's not only one country that wants the other companies to invest in it. It's a solid relationship with a balanced stock of investments that will build a long-term partnership. And one obvious sector that we can think about is like IT, ICT, yes, even better. There are many companies of India already installed in Brazil, not only in ICT, but also in pharma sector, energy transmission, and we are very glad for their investment in Brazil. We have a few companies of Brazil also investing in India, and it's good that they are learning how to do it. I cannot but to mention the perspective that Mr. Virat mentioned at the beginning of MERCOSUR-India agreement. We have the mandate. We have an agreement that is very shy, and we have to be ambitious. The next agreement has to be as comprehensive as possible, enlarge the coverage and the depth of the concessions, bilateral concessions, because as Ambassador Reddy also mentioned, Brazil can work for India as a gateway to MERCOSUR, South America, Latin America as a whole. And the best way is to work on a very positive, very ambitious, and comprehensive MERCOSUR-India agreement. We have a few agreements that are been signed during the presidential visit or even before. They're still waiting for ratification, mostly on Brazilian side. Our process is more complicated. India has the advantage of a parliamentarian system that expedites it. Presidential system is not so easy, but we are working on that. And I want to mention the investment cooperation facilitation agreement, the agreement on social security, both in Brazilian Parliament, and just a few days ago, let's say, the Competition Commission of India and the Administrative Council of Economic Defense of Brazil signed the Memorandum of Understanding, which is a very big step to strengthen the business atmosphere, the business trustworthiness between the two countries. I want to finalize by saying that we are very committed, both Brazilian and I know the Indian government too. I've never seen two embassies that cooperate so closely. We are very committed to strengthening the relationship, and with partners like TPCI, like it's easy, I would say. It's not easier just because this pandemic has really rocked the boat for everybody, but it's a lot of potential, and we have to work on that. We have to work on lifting the barriers that are left, like SPS, and work on a trade agreement between MERCOSUR and India that will for sure make it much easier for both countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for rightly emphasizing on the strategic nature of this relationship. And I would now like to request Mr. Leonardo Ananda, President, India-Brazil Chamber of Commerce and Honorable Consul General of India to Rio de Janeiro, to share his perspectives on the business relationship and how India-Brazil Chamber of Commerce would like to take it in the coming years.
Okay, namaste to all. Namaste, everyone. I hope everyone is fine and healthy. Virat, could you share my small presentation, please, with everybody? Yeah, so It's not easy for me to speak after two great masters of the India-Brazil relationship. Speaking after two great diplomats, it's not easy. But I will start with this beautiful landscape from Rio de Janeiro. In my opinion, one of the most beautiful locations in the planet. And I hope to have you, all my Indian friends, here in Brazil soon again. And I would like to invite TPCI to organize an event like this one in Rio de Janeiro next time. It will be a pleasure for the India-Brazil Chamber of Commerce. It will be a pleasure for the consulate to host you here, to help you to organize a great event here in Rio de Janeiro after this pandemic time. Next one, please. Next slide, please. Yes. So, of course, first I would like to congratulate all the speakers from today. First, my dear friend, Ambassador of India in Brazil, Suresh Reddy. Congratulations for your great presentation, Ambassador, and thank you very much. Your Excellency are really making the difference in this relationship, and thank you for that. And of course, greet and congratulate Mr. Eduardo Musiel from the Embassy of Brazil in New Delhi. Congratulations for your great presentation as well, Mr. Musiel. And please send my warm regards to my dear friend, Ambassador of Brazil in New Delhi, André Aranha Correia do Lago. He is always a good partner of the India-Brazil Chamber. You have a very competent, a very good team at the embassy, and we really appreciate it. And of course, our friends from TPCI, Mr. Makijani and Mr. Ashok Sethi, thank you very much for the invitation, and congratulations to organize this such important event. It's very important to have events like this one. One of the biggest challenges of this relationship, as our ambassador told here today, and Mr. Uziel told as well, the lack of knowledge. It's in my opinion, is the biggest challenge. So we have to organize events like this one to promote this very important relationship. Next one, please. So now I would like to introduce myself. My name is Leonardo Ananda Gomes. I'm the current president of India-Brazil Chamber of Commerce, and I'm also in charge of the Honorary Consulate General of India in Rio de Janeiro, and I'm very proud of that. But the most important thing, I'm passionate about the India-Brazil relationship. Next one, please. And now I would like to introduce the India-Brazil Chamber of Commerce and how the chamber is working to promote this very important relationship. We have a new slogan because we are celebrating 18 years old this year. So we have this slogan, studying solutions, providing realities. I think this slogan tells a lot about our work and how we are working to promote this relationship. Next one, please. And some highlights about the chamber. As I told, we are celebrating 18 years old. The chamber was created in November 2003. So we intend to have a big party to celebrate our 18 years old in the end of this year. We have organized more than 30 business and official missions to India, Brazilian delegations to India, 2 of them with TPCI to attend the Indus Food. It was a great moment of this relationship. We have now more than 100 associated companies, more than 100 members, Indian and Brazilian companies from many sectors. So we are a multi-sector institution. We are very proud to have a very strict guidelines of compliance and integrity inside of the chamber. And in my opinion, the most important thing, we have a young but a very competent team who really understand the importance of this India-Brazil relationship, and they are always studying and are always updating themselves to offer the best service to our members and helping our members to make the difference in this relationship. Next one, please. And another very important point, we have the Indian and Brazil government support through the Embassy of Brazil in New Delhi and through the Embassy of India in Brasília, and of course through the all consulates as well. And we are proud to have very important partnerships with great institutions in India like TPCI, Invest India, FICCI, CII, other associations from many sectors like Farmexil, and of course many Brazilian institutions like CNI, like Apex Brazil. It's very important to have this partnership for us, because with this partnership we can share the right information about India to our Brazilian members, and of course the right informations about the Brazilian market and the Brazilian institutions to our Indian members. Next one, please. And now a picture of a very important moment from our history, when Mr. Kapil Gupta, a good friend, came to Brazil with a very important delegation from India to attend a very important textile fair in São Paulo. It was in 2017, May 2017, and we have signed this very important memorandum of understanding, and we are very proud of that, Mr. Seth, to have this partnership with TPCI. It's very important for the chamber. Next one, please. And another very important point, we have at the chamber a very prominent advisory board, where we are very proud to have Ratan Tata as a member of our board since 2004. He's always supporting us, assisting us to find the right partners in India, to talk with the right people in India. And we have other great members as Jai Shroff. As you may know, UPL has great investments in Brazil in the agro sector. We have Pratika Garval, the CEO of Sterlite Power. As Mr. Uziel has mentioned, they have great investments in Brazil. They are building a lot of transmission lines in many states in Brazil. Another very important member from our advisory board, a very good friend, Mr. Karan Singh, from a very important pharma company in Mumbai, ACG. They did a very important investment in the southeast of Brazil, in the countryside of Minas Gerais state. They have a beautiful capsules, pharma capsules plant in Brazil, and they intend to expand it. They are selling capsules to all the states in Brazil, and they are already exporting pharma capsules from Brazil to United States. So they are doing very well here in Brazil. It's a very important pharma investment from India here in Brazil. Another member from our advisory board, Mr. Lalit Malik from Royal Enfield. They are doing very well with their beautiful motorcycles here in Brazil. They have more than 10 dealerships already here in Brazil in many states, and they intend to have an assembly plant, and the India-Brazil Chamber are assisting them to find the best location, the best way to have this plant. And we have, and we are very proud to have our first lady in the board, Ms. Suchitra Ella, founder of Bharat Biotech. They also intend to have a vaccine plant in Brazil. We really need to have this kind of investment here in Brazil, and the India-Brazil Chamber are helping them as well. Next one, please. And now about the sectors. In our opinion, and India-Brazil Chamber of Commerce opinion, we have these 5 main sectors to explore the potential in this relationship: the pharma sector, the energy sector, ICT, agro, and aerospace and aviation. Of course, we are working to promote other sectors as well, but in our opinion, those 5 sectors are the main one. And now I'm going to tell a little bit about some specific case from all the sectors. Next one, please. You can see here in the at the Brazilian map, we have, as Mr. Rosiel told us, we have a lot of investments from the Indian side. A lot of Indian companies are investing in Brazil. Around $10 billion of investments, more than 40 Indian companies are investing here. So here you can see a lot of great investments from the pharma sector. As you can see, companies like ACG, Aurobindo, Zydus, Lupin, many companies are already investing in Brazil, producing medicines and APIs in Brazil, and of course employing here in Brazil. So the pharma sector in Brazil is booming because of the Indian presence. And of course we have many important investments in the IT sector as well. We have companies like TCS, Infosys, Wipro, HCL, Genpact, all of them are doing well. For instance, we have TCS with a lot of centers in Brazil. They have a very important center in São Paulo. They have a new center in Londrina in the south of Brazil. They have a center in Brasília, in Rio de Janeiro, important clients here in Brazil, and they are booming. They are increasing a lot here in Brazil and doing a great job. And of course, we have other investments in the energy sector, like I told you before, Esterlite Power. We have Site Towers. Site Towers is a company from RPG Group, a huge Indian group. They are doing very well here in Brazil, in Minas Gerais state. We have great investments in the oil and gas sector with Bharat Petroleum, with ONGC. They have a good presence in Rio de Janeiro state. And of course, we have other investments in many other sectors. And I would like to highlight a big investment from Aditya Birla Group. They have a big investment in the aluminum sector. And of course, we have some very important Brazilian companies presence investing in India as well. Not a lot, we have around 10 companies, but we have very important and prominent companies like Vale in the mining sector, like Havaianas is a very famous Brazilian brand from the footwear sector. We have a very important joint venture. It was our first success case from India-Brazil Chamber, a joint venture between Marco Polo and Tata Motors. Now they have two important plants of buses, one in Karnataka and another one in Lucknow, and they are doing very well in India. We have a very nice case from the healthcare sector of Fanin. They have a plant in the south of India as well. And I'm very glad I went to India in the last month and I met the new director of Embraer in India. So they will start an office in India because as we know, the aviation and the aerospace sector has a huge potential in the Indian market. That's it, just to give you an overview about the main investments from India in Brazil and from Brazil in India, to tell a little bit about the India-Brazil Chamber of Commerce, about the main sectors. But we are here at your disposal, at all the Indian companies' disposal to help, to assist, to support them, to establish, to start business here in Brazil, and of course, to assisting Indian companies and to assist the Brazilian companies to do business in India as well. Once again, thank you very much for TPCI for the invitation and to organize this such important event. Thank you very much. Namaste.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Ananda, for your remarks and your insights on the sectors which are critical to our bilateral partnership. I would now like to request Mr. Ashok Sethi, Director, Trade Promotion Council of India, to provide the Indian perspective to trade enhancement with Brazil. Mr. Ashok Sethi, sir, please.
Thank you, Virat. Your Excellency, Mr. Suresh Reddy, Ambassador, Embassy of India, Your Excellency, Mr. Eduardo Uzil, Charge d'Affaires Embassy of Brazil, Mr. Leonardo Ananda Gomes, President, India-Brazil Chamber of Commerce, and also the Honorary CGI Rio de Janeiro, and Mr. Makijani, my senior colleague. I shall be presenting a quick snapshot on the India-Brazil bilateral trade investment opportunities and a brief look at the strengths and opportunities of present status. You know, a lot of it has already been said. I'm just repeating with some data which I picked up, which I thought would be interesting as a food for thought. Since this is our first interaction, I do believe that this particular interactivity, which His Excellency also mentioned, is a path ahead for us, probably will pave a way for a better business environment. So what I've done is I've made a short presentation, which I'd like to place before us, if you allow me, please. Yeah. Well, at the onset, I wanted to just give a short insight into what is Trade Promotion Council of India. Having said that, I thought that it was important that as the progress goes on this interactivity, we should know what exactly is Trade Promotion Council of India. So just a quick introduction. It's an apex trade and investment promotion organization. It's been notified by the Foreign Trade Policy, Government of India, also recognized and supported by the Ministry of Commerce and Industries, Ministry of MSME, Ministry of External Affairs, and several state governments. It has 2,500 plus active industry members from F&B, food processing, chemical and allied, ceramics, IT infrastructure, and now service sector. You know that service sector is at its lowest ebb right now, but definitely it has all the scope to grow. So we have some sectorial committees also which cover trade and investment promotions in food and beverage and food processing, packaging, has a special sectorial sector for trade and investment promotions like chemicals, ceramic products, and service. Can we all see the slide, please?
Yes, sir, we can see.
Okay, great. So I wanted to talk about, Trade Promotion Council of India has a very strong flagship global event called Indus Food, which not only covers the food and beverage sector as food, but also the food and beverage technology sector. And, this is an annual global event which happens in Greater Noida, and it is under the auspices of the Ministry of Commerce and Industries, Government of India. So just wanted to bring to your notice that just before the pandemic in 2019, for 2 days, we had this program of Indus Food in which we had around 400 strong Indian exporters, including a lot of MSMEs, and over 1,000 hosted buyers from around 70 countries who participated and did business across the table to a tune of about $2 billion. This is actually an event which is happening annually. And we were very lucky that in March 7th and 8th, we were again able to do it just before, the real wave started of the pandemic. And despite a lot of absenteeism from various countries, we still had about 200 Indian exporters and 550 hosted buyers from 42 countries. So you can just see how keen people are to come just to this show, which actually has been a very strong reply to another event in Dubai called, the Dubai Festival, Food Festival. These are just snapshots of glimpses of Indus food where you see a lot of activity happening. A lot of stalls and people visiting. You can see in the foyer, again, a lot of business going on. And as I told you, we did $2 billion worth of business in 2019. So basically, talking of the snapshots, we've been talking about it, that both the governments and both the economies are committed to expand bilateral trades. A lot of things have to happen, but had to happen by 2022, as Mr. Leonardo did mention, that because of the present situation of pandemics, this may not be achieved, but definitely needs to be revisited for more realistic figures. There's been definitely an increased interest for bilateral investments, as very well pointed out. And the spheres have been electrical manufacturing, biofuels, aerospace, defense as specifically mentioned, pharmaceuticals and IT. And therefore, we find that Indian businesses have started investing, as very rightly mentioned by our earlier respected panelists, that sectors like IT, mining, infrastructure, energy have potentials to grow where India would be keen on investing. We talked about, again, the economies emphasizing on the importance of the India-MERCOSUR preferential trade agreement. Yes, this is a very important platform. I think, as mentioned, it's the gateway to a lot of business potential happening in the area, where Brazil can give a lot of lead and leeway. So we do believe that by increasing the coverage of the products available from both the countries and addressing tariff issues, which, sometimes are, things called non-tariff barriers, which often happen. If these are addressed, there's no way in which the business of the economies cannot grow to targets which we have fixed on mind. Now, I have picked up some figures which we are all aware of, but I just wanted to highlight them. That 2018 to 2020, I see a trend going down, which is again all because of the pandemic, as I do believe. So there's around a 13% degrowth 2019 versus 18, and against 2020 versus 19, again a 4% degrowth. These are areas which means, as you can see, the Indian imports from Brazil have been going down, but India's export to Brazil went up in 2019, again took a dip. But again, because of what is happening all over the world, the global issues. So these are areas where we need to, progress upon and see where are the opportunities and where are the threats. I would like to come to another very interesting piece of information, which is the India's top exporting products, i.e. potential exports to Brazil. Now in 2020, I'll just take one row and explain it, and the others can be understood very well, is that, for example, in medium oil and preparations, India's export to Brazil was only 3.4% of Brazil's imports from the world. And if you look at it, India's exports to the world was about $17,600 million, which means we have prospects to grow both ways. So there is a demand and supply gap which needs to be filled in, which you will find again in medicaments, you'll see in semi-milled whole rice, aluminium, parts and accessories of vehicles. And if you look at the overall picture, India's share in Brazil's total imports is around just 10%. So here is an opportunity where I thought that we can grow. Look at the other picture of Brazil's top exporting products, i.e. potential exports to India in 2020. Again, I'll take one example, which is the petroleum oils. You can see that Brazil's share in India's total imports in this particular sector is around 2%. The rest coming from Iraq, Saudi, and UAE. Similarly, other products. So if you look at Brazil's share in India's total imports, it's only about 2%. So again, there is a huge scope to grow. So we have therefore thrown light on some of the sectorial products which we believe can be tapped immediately to increase the bilateral trade. And hopefully in the next couple of years, indeed, let's pray that the pandemic blows away soon and we get back to business, which is between two excellent, willing and friendly nations. And as His Excellency the Ambassador mentioned, TPCI would always be ready to participate on an agreed format to enhance this mutual trade. Thank you very much, gentlemen. That's what I had to say. Thank you, Virat.
Thank you so much, sir. And thank you everyone for your initial remarks. I will just take a few minutes now to address some of the key questions regarding India-Brazil trade relations with each of the honorable panelists. First of all, I would like to request Your Excellency Shri Suresh Reddy to just respond to some of these queries. The first one, sir, is regarding the India-MERCOSUR PTA expansion, which has been on the agenda of both partners, I mean the MERCOSUR member countries and India. Therefore, I would like to know from you, where do we stand currently in negotiations, and what expectations does India have from the expansion in terms of sectors?
Thank you. Thank you. I think it's an important question because when we look at trading with the region, we start with Brazil as the largest economy. And then we look at Brazil and MERCOSUR as the bigger economic basket, which we need to tap into. So India is naturally interested in expanding, the existing limited PTA into a more broad-based agreement with MERCOSUR. We have been having discussions. We hope to make progress. Obviously, currently there are some internal discussions which are happening within the MERCOSUR countries themselves. But at the same time, all the countries are committed to strengthening the bilateral arrangement with India and also the arrangement under MERCOSUR. It's only a question of time before the framework is put in place, but it will be happening sooner, if not later. Yeah, one of the interesting presentations, slides that was presented was about the investment. When you look at engagement between the two countries, as I said, when you look at the size of the economy, obviously it immediately brings to the focus about the potential for joint ventures. Because Brazilian companies are looking at Indian market for joint ventures because they recognize the size of the Indian market. And they recognize that from Indian market, they can reach out to the broader neighborhood, both from this side, from the Gulf and all the way to the Southeast Asian countries. So in a way, by having a big base, which is the local big market, then using that big market to tap into the neighborhood. Similarly for Indian companies also, they keep Brazil as the base, and from Brazil, they can tap into all the neighboring countries. Because Brazil also has not only the MERCOSUR arrangement, but it also has practically a lot of trading arrangements with almost all the other Latin American countries, and plus with many other countries. So when you really look at having Brazil as a base, you're really looking at a larger Latin American region. And what I find increasingly interesting is that the private sector in Brazil is actively looking at Indian companies for partnerships. The partnerships are two kinds. One is a joint venture for manufacturing, but also for technology transfer. And here also, interestingly, I find that Indian startups are beginning to look at Brazil more closely. They wish to establish all kinds of linkages, including equity participation, including tapping into technology partnership, technology transfer, etc., etc. So there's really a lot of diversified kind of engagement which is happening. And again, we need to remember it is a size of the economy which provides that opportunities. It's such a multifaceted, multi-sectoral, large-scale economy that Brazil has. I mean, similar to India, that is why. I will stop here.
Thank you, Your Excellency. We obviously set an aggressive target to boost bilateral trade to $15 billion by 2022, which obviously because of COVID will need to be adjusted, as was mentioned earlier. But which sectors do you see in the current scenario which will help both sides catalyze their trade? And if you could also mention if there are some critical challenges which are coming in the way of greater integration.
You know, Mr. Ashok had in his presentation also pointed out to some of the sectors. Now we had also done an in-house exercise of both products which Brazil can export to India and products which India can export to Brazil. See, some of the products we looked into the top 100 products. I mean, we started with 50, and now we are looking at expanding it even more. When you look at it, I would say that India is faring. We assessed like what was done by Ashok ji in his presentation as to what is a total import and what is India's rank in that, and then B, does India have the potential to increase its exports? Because if it didn't have the potential, there's no point in even looking at the product, right? Or if our overall exports was limited, then again, no point in wasting their time and energy trying to promote a product in which there's not much scope. So I think when we look at it, some of the items is obviously starting with the motor vehicles, the two-wheelers. If you find even overall our own exports of two-wheelers and motor vehicles is the highest to Latin America as compared to all the other countries. Similarly, the automotive components, because this being large economies, whether you look at Brazil, Argentina, Colombia, Chile, whatever, these are large economies, and so they have adequate manufacturing facility in automotive vehicles. So that means there's a great scope for us to increase our automotive components, right? Then, of course, pharma. We are already doing quite well in the pharma sector, but still not enough. There's always scope to do much, much more. And here, what is of interest is that is our strength, the generics. See, what this pandemic has done is that it has made every country reassess its approach to the healthcare system, to the public healthcare system. Because when they keep depending upon the traditionally the branded, pharmaceutical suppliers, obviously they are not in a position to cater to the increasing demand of the public. They're not in a position to keep increasing the budgetary allocation for the national healthcare systems. So that is where the role of India becomes critical. India being the global pharmacy, India known as a global pharmacy, our contribution to the national healthcare system for these countries is quite huge. And we have the potential to increase it in a much more substantial manner. And Brazil already has a good presence of many Indian pharmaceutical companies. But I believe it is not enough. Our companies need to be present much more because this market deserves it. And this deserves also the effort and energy being put in by our companies if they wish to really benefit from exploiting this opportunity. And when you talk of pharma, you're again talking of packaging. Because Brazil also has a very successful pharmaceutical industry, so there's a lot of scope for packaging-related, activities also. Whether it is pharmaceutical packagings or whether it is food processing or whether food product-related packaging or overall the packaging, that is also another big scope which is existing in that. And then, of course, plastics. It goes without saying that a large economy with a large population, there is always need for all kinds of plastic suppliers. And here I must compliment, I was looking at the presentation made by Mr. Ashok in terms of the sectoral groupings within the TPCI itself. I think every grouping itself has a good market here. I mentioned about the packaging, I mentioned about the pharma, there are of course chemicals and ceramics, because Brazil again has a very booming construction industry, both in housing sector and I think. So there's a lot of demand for ceramics of all kinds, from electrical to household to you name it. That's another big market which is waiting. I'm just giving a list, but as I said, we have identified about 60-70 products on which we are now planning to do a more focused, more aggressive kind of a promotion of those products in partnership with those respective associations.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Finally, how do you view the trend of Brazilian investments? Of course, it's mentioned that it's not as high as Indian investments in Brazil, and especially when we talk about post-COVID and the global drive towards relocation of manufacturing facilities. What opportunities does India offer as a manufacturing destination, especially as we are coming up with initiatives like PLI to encourage greater manufacturing and become a more prominent global manufacturing hub?
See, Brazil has some of the world's biggest companies. whether it is in the food processing or whether including in the tires, etc. For example, I met one company which has got factories in about 8 countries, and recently they've acquired another unit in India. Brazil has got, as I said, a very successful large-scale private sector. Only thing was that India was always that wonderful country, but it was kind of at a distance, right? But today, slowly, the India growth story is beginning to resonate, is beginning to appear here. People are beginning to recognize that, and people are beginning to recognize the opportunities provided. And this is where, as I mentioned, the technology has come into play. It has made people communicate irrespective of the language. You know, thanks to Google Translate and whatnot, you're actually able to communicate, you're able to respond. And also, thanks to the digital technology, you're able to visually sit across a table and have discussions. And this has made the Brazilian companies recognize the scope for provided by the Indian market. And so there is active interest being shown by Brazilian private sector in looking into Indian market. And we have also been reaching out. I mean, I've been traveling to all the key cities and I've been meeting the local businessmen, local business associations, talking to them and answering those doubts and questions. Now, we need to remember that Brazil and India are somewhat similar in the sense as 2 large economies, but at the same time, initially, we were not maybe investor friendly, so to say. It took some time for the foreign companies to come to get used to the way of doing business in India, way of doing business in Brazil. And here, that is where the success of organizations such as the TPCI, etc., and importantly, Invest India and other organizations, they have become critical in holding the hands of the investors, and this has smoothened the process quite a lot. Really, one point which I wanted to mention, Mr. Eduardo had spoken about the superfoods. Really, Mr. Eduardo, you'll be surprised that last, I think 3 months or 4 months back, the Honorable Prime Minister had launched an initiative for fortified nutrients. So it's a very big activity under which the food which is being supplied under the public scheme, the public rationing scheme, public ration scheme, where now the food which is being supplied is now we are trying to increase the nutrients in the food, so to say. So as you correctly said, yeah, there is scope in that area also.
Right. Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for your remarks, and that's really inspiring to know that initiatives are being taken and that they hold a lot of promise. I would now like to come to Mr. Eduardo Uziel. Sir, the Honorable Ambassador's touched based on the India-MERCOSUR PT expansion. Can we also have your perspective, though you have touched on it a bit earlier, but what is Brazil looking forward to with this expansion?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you well. You mean MERCOSUR?
Yes, yes.
I'm sorry. It was for a moment I couldn't hear well. Yes. Oh, thank you very much. As I mentioned before in my initial presentation, the free trade agreements are a major step for us to expand the relationship, bilateral trade relationships, by means with partners of MERCOSUR, everybody together. The current PTA is fairly small. I mean, I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's about 15% of Brazilian exports and 40% of Indian exports to Brazil or MERCOSUR are benefiting from this. So it's fairly small. We have a lot of ground to cover. And I mentioned also that we want an ambitious and comprehensive agreement in the sense that we want to include agriculture, and any sector is fair game, let's say, for these negotiations. This semester actually, second half of 2021, it's Brazilian presidency of MERCOSUR, and we are hoping to kickstart these negotiations. We have the mandate for a while. We have been coming closer and closer to actually negotiate, and we really hope that this time it will be the time to go to the boats and all the small details that are so complicated in these agreements. But we are very hopeful they will be very ambitious. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think agri and processed food is a sector which has resonated time and again in this webinar. Both India and Brazil have a rich agri-resource base, and at least we in India are looking at significantly enhancing our food processing infrastructure. What opportunities do you envision for both companies of India and Brazil to collaborate in this sector and enhance their respective processed food industries going forward?
Thank you again, and I'm very glad that Ambassador already mentioned the superfoods, and it's quite interesting because food and food processing sector are the major opportunities for Brazilian companies in India, and both in the sense of opportunity, immediate opportunity, but there's also a long-term investment in the. I mentioned pulses in my initial presentation, but I would like to mention two interesting facts that not everybody knows. That not 2 years ago, Brazil started exporting apples to India. And now India is the biggest destination of apples from Brazil. So it's like from zero to our biggest market for apples, just because a few obstacles were overcome. Another thing is like, since Brazil is mostly in the southern hemisphere and India is mostly in the northern hemisphere, we have a comparative advantage in being able to provide food in the interseason when the crops are not ready here, but Brazilian crops can be shipped here. So cotton is an example that comes to mind, but also coffee. I mean, Brazil, like forever, has been the largest producer of coffee in the world, but we are now like investing a lot in specialized coffees, and we are hoping to enter the market in India. By the way, Indian coffees are very good. I must say it's not a surprise, but it's a great thing to learn when I arrived in Delhi. About food processing is this kind of opportunity that Brazilian companies might have in India for a long-term investment, in the sense that it's a huge market here. I mean, it's a growing one. Not only huge, it's growing. I mean, as the quality of life is improving, people are eating more processed foods, and Brazil has the foods to export, but also experience in food processing that we can work here in India. Well, thank you. I'll stop here because it's quite late. I don't want to be too long. Thank you.
Right. So, a final question to you is regarding the trend of investments by Indian companies in Brazil. Which sectors are of interest and the potential, and also in the interest of improving the awareness quotient which we are talking about, what are the key benefits that Brazil provides India as an investment destination for Indian companies?
Well, thank you very much. I think that we've mentioned a few of these ideas already, but I want to say that Brazil remains one of the most attractive destinations for foreign direct investment in the world. And the Brazilian government has been working hard to make it more attractive with less bureaucracy, opening more the economy, opening the public sector. Like just a few weeks ago, we changed our legislation for public tenders to be more attractive. And I know that Indian companies are already registering for this new system of public tenders. Another point is that Brazil is obviously a gateway to MERCOSUR and a gateway to Latin America. So this is another advantage. But Ambassador already mentioned, and I agree with him in the sense that like there are sectors that are already very populated with Indian companies in Brazil, and they are very attractive. The pharma, Leonardo mentioned some others like energy. Leonardo mentioned also, everybody knows that it's like ICT is also a very attractive sector. And of course, agribusiness is obviously, I mean, we have Brazilian have opportunities here, but there's also opportunities for Indian companies in Brazil. I want to mention, for instance, also, I mentioned briefly the startups. but it's a new startup framework, legal framework in Brazil. We want to encourage startups to come to Brazil, and India is a major producer of startups, if I can say so, and they're very welcome in Brazil. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your remarks. I would like to now come to Mr. Leonardo Ananda Gomes. I have two questions from you, which I may like to club them into one. Firstly, what do you think are the main challenges which are, coming in the way of India-Brazil relationship getting stronger? And how are you working as a chamber to intensify these relations or to remove these or overcome these obstacles?
Okay, Virat, great question. Thank you for that. Of course, we have some regular challenges. The distance, as our ambassador told, is not easy to reach India. We take at least 2 days to reach New Delhi from São Paulo, but I think we can manage it. The language, as you know, we are not English speakers. Most of the Indians speaks English, but in Brazil, we are still learning. And the other challenge is the time, the time difference. Sometimes you have to work during the morning time, very early to talk with our Indian partners. But in my opinion, the biggest challenge is the lack of knowledge. This is the reason that events like this one is so important to promote the trade and to attract investments, because really the Brazilians doesn't know India and the Indians doesn't know Brazil yet. And it's very important to spread, to share the right information. The right information about India, the right information about the Indian companies, the right information about the Brazilian companies. And so with this kind of events, organize some delegations. I think it's very important to organize delegations from India to Brazil and from Brazil to India. It's very important for the Brazilians businessmen to go and see with their eyes the potential of the Indian market. So I think it's another way to promote this relationship. So, and of course, the India-Brazil Chamber is doing our best to promote it, to organize events like this one. We are always organizing events with the Indian embassy, with the Brazilian embassy, with institutions like TPCI. It's important to try to overcome this lack of knowledge. And we are looking forward to start our delegations to India again. We love it. We know that this is one of the good ways to foment this relationship. And that's it. And in my opinion, the most important thing is share the right informations about India and the right informations in India about Brazil.
Right. Thank you so much. I think your feeling on the delegations is quite mutual. So it's shared by both countries. So finally, you mentioned quite a few sectors in your presentation. Would you like to highlight one sector in particular which comes to mind, which has the greatest growth potential in your view?
Sure. I think the food sector, the agribusiness sector, in my opinion, is the main one. As Mr. Eduardo said, we have 1.040 billion people in India eating dal every day. And we have a big land here in Brazil. We have all the capabilities to produce pulses here in Brazil. And we are starting on that, but I think we have a huge potential and we have to invest more on that. I think the agri sector will be the main sector in this relationship. This is our opinion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gomes, and thank you everyone for this intense session. I would like to request Your Excellency Shri Suresh Reddy to give us your closing remarks, please.
I'd like to really start by complimenting TPCA on this wonderful initiative. Because trade can happen when there's a recognition of the opportunities which exist. Before, we were not really tapping into this potential because we knew two large countries, but as I mentioned, the distance, the language, etc., did not really support the realization of this opportunity. But today, we do not have a choice. Our industries do not have a choice. We need to look at expanding into new markets. We need to tap into the new opportunities. And similarly, Brazil is also looking for new markets, for new opportunities. And I believe TPCA is doing a great job by organizing such events. And we look forward to really working more with you and with your member companies. And we are here to serve the Indian industry anytime. And please feel free to reach out to us. My only request to the Indian industry through TPCA is that please recognize that the embassies are here to serve you. And so please reach out to us freely. And the more specific your query, your question, your information requirement is, the better we are able to serve you. And our email, we have already put it in the chat box. So please do send us all your queries. We'll be very happy to support you. Thank you. Thank you so much again.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for your vital support and encouragement. I would like to now respectfully request our Joint Director General, Sri Suresh Makhijani, sir, to deliver the vote of thanks for this session.
Thank you, Virat. Thank you very much. That brings us to the end of an excellent session with exceptional insights on the key drivers and future potential of India business bilateral trade relations. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the esteemed panelists, His Excellency Mr. Suresh Reddy, Ambassador of India to Brazil, Mr. Eduardo Uzil, Charge d'Affaires, Minister Counselor, Embassy of Brazil to India, Mr. Leonardo Ananda, President, India Business Chamber of Commerce, and Honorary Consul General of India to Rio de Janeiro, Mr. Ashok Sethi, my colleague, Director, Trade Promotion Council of India. Thank you so much, sirs, for sparing time and sharing your invaluable perspectives on India-Brazil ties. And we are positive that these will provide inspiration and direction to the policymakers and industry on both sides as they build on past gains and explore new avenues to strengthen these ties for mutual interest. With this, I respectfully bring this session to a close. Thank you very much, sirs, once again.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.